The alarm clock rang like a siren, breaking the silence of the dimly lit room. He groggily reached out and silenced it, staring at the ceiling. Another day, another routine. But something felt different. A strange, nagging thought crept into his mind. What if today was my last chance? He shook off the feeling and went about his morning as usual. A quick shower, a rushed breakfast, and out the door. The streets were the same, the people unchanged, the world moving forward as if on autopilot. But the thought refused to leave him. At work, he sat in his cubicle, staring blankly at his computer screen. Reports, emails, deadlines, everything felt meaningless. He had spent years chasing promotions, pay raises, and a title that seemed to define his worth. But deep inside, he knew he had dreams buried beneath the weight of responsibility. He thought about his childhood dreams, writing a book, traveling the world, starting a charity. He had promised himself he would do them someday, but that someday had never arrived. What if today was my last chance? The thought sent a chill down his spine. During lunch, he picked up his phone and called his mother, something he hadn't done in months. Her voice was warm, filled with surprise and joy. They spoke about old times, laughter filling the spaces between words. It was a simple call, but it made him feel lighter. Walking back to his office, he passed by a homeless man on the sidewalk. He had seen him many times before, but had never stopped. Today, something compelled him to. He bought an extra sandwich and handed it to the man, who looked up with eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," the man whispered, and for the first time in a long time, he felt alive. Back at work, he drafted his resignation letter but didn't send it. Instead, he took a blank sheet of paper and wrote down everything he wanted to do in life. He looked at the list and realized something. He was waiting for the perfect moment that would never come. What if today was my last chance? That evening, he took a different route home and ended up at an old bookstore he used to love. He bought a notebook and wrote the first page of the book he had always wanted to write. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. He called his best friend and apologized for all the missed meetups, then set a date to catch up. He sat at the dinner table with his family, listening to their stories instead of scrolling through his phone. He looked at the stars that night, realizing how long it had been since he had admired them. Lying in bed, he felt different, lighter, happier. He had lived more today than he had in years. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing. If today had been his last chance, he had made it count. The next morning, he woke up with the same thought lingering in his mind. What if today was my last chance? But now, instead of fear, he felt excitement. It was no longer a question filled with regret, but an invitation to live fully. Instead of his usual rushed breakfast, he took the time to make a fresh cup of coffee and actually savor the taste. He stepped out onto the balcony, feeling the morning sun on his skin, something he had neglected for years. Birds chirped, and the city hummed with life. How many moments like this have I ignored? He wondered. At work, he found himself paying closer attention to his colleagues. He noticed how tired some of them looked, how mechanical their movements had become. He started conversations, real ones, not just about deadlines, but about dreams, struggles, and aspirations. For the first time in years, his workplace felt less like a prison and more like a place filled with real people. During lunch, he made another spontaneous decision. Instead of eating alone at his desk, he invited an old co-worker he had lost touch with. Over lunch, they talked about their past, the things they had once aspired to do. His friend mentioned a passion for photography, but had buried it under the weight of responsibilities. "Why not pick it up again?" he asked. "Why not start today?" That evening, he took a walk through the city, exploring places he had never paid attention to before. He noticed street musicians playing their hearts out, small bookstores filled with dreamers, cafes buzzing with ideas. He realized the world was filled with people who were chasing their last chances, refusing to let time slip away. By the time he returned home, he had written more pages in his notebook. His book was beginning to take shape. He didn't care if it became a bestseller or not. What mattered was that he was writing, truly expressing himself. He had spent too long silencing his voice, and now he was finally letting it speak. Days turned into weeks, and he found himself living with a new sense of urgency, not from fear, but from purpose. He started making time for things that truly mattered. He visited his parents more often, reconnected with friends, volunteered at shelters, and even took the first steps toward launching the charity he had always dreamed of. One evening, he received a call that shook him. A close friend had suddenly passed away. The news hit him hard. Just weeks ago, they had talked about catching up, but they never did. It was a painful reminder of how fragile time was. That night, he sat on his balcony, staring at the stars. What if today really had been my last chance? He realized that no one ever truly knows how much time they have. But he also realized something even more powerful. He was no longer afraid of that question, because every day he was making it count. Life is unpredictable. We spend so much time waiting for the right moment, the right opportunity, the right person. But the truth is, there is no perfect time. The only time we have is now. So he made a promise to himself: never wait again. Whether it was love, passion, dreams, or even a simple conversation, he would embrace it all, fully and fearlessly. And as he closed his eyes that night, he knew one thing for sure. If today was his last chance, he had lived it well.